watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 95, Introduction to the XPages Debug Toolbar, possibly the most important tool for the XPages developer. Okay, here's a quick slide on some of the other resources that I provide the community. There you go. And here's a slide on additional community resources. The big one is xpages.info, basically our home start page. OpenNTF.org has tons of code and samples and projects you can download. Collaboration Today is this kind of nice aggregator which has an app dev category inside it with tons of XPages blog posts that show up. We have an XPages forum on IBM Developer Works, and I don't know those links, so I just always Google XPages forum and I get right there. And Stack Overflow, I believe, is last I looked, is more than 700 questions on XPages. Many of them have answers to them, so that's a great place to go and read other questions and try to get some questions answered yourself. Okay, today we have a new contributor that I'm really excited about. I'm excited about getting him on. I'm excited about getting this topic on. His name is Mark Leusink, and he's a freelance consultant developer from the Netherlands, and he specializes in XPages, web, Java mobile, smart people stuff, basically. He truly is an expert, and he's a great programmer. He's also an IBM champion, and his contact information is here if you need that. And what he did, and he did this very early on in the XPages life cycle, I guess I'll call it, is he created this debug toolbar. It started as I think more of like a simple custom control and has grown since then to something a little more. And he won the third OpenNTF contest with us, and this is a must-have tool for your development applications. We never have had a server-side JavaScript debugger, at least not yet. We don't have a server-side JavaScript debugger. So what this does is it allows us to kind of see some things that we can't easily see. It lets us see the scoped variables, view, application, session scope, probably request scope also. I never use request scope myself, but it lets you see these things. It lets you clear these so you can kind of manipulate things a little bit live as you're testing. It can be easily added to your application through the OpenNTF importer, so you can basically right-click in Designer and just bring this down and ingest it into your application. So it's very cool to get started with it. It does a whole lot more, which he'll show you in the introduction. I'm particularly interested in the messaging stuff, but it just does so much good. It gives you so much good help for developing. Now, if you think of your XPages toolbox, there's a couple things you need to have, and this has to be at the top of the list, the XPages Debug Toolbar. The next one, which I believe I covered in another show, I'd have to check, is the XPages Log File Reader. That's an application you can install on your development server, or even your production server. We run it in production too, and all it does, it's just an application, but it helps you read the log files that your server generates, error messages, even the console, and some other stuff. So that's a great tool to have. And probably the granddaddy of them all must-have tools is OpenLog by Julian Robichaux. That started as basically an error trapper and one-stop tool for tracking any messages, any errors, and getting them all in one database in one place. And I haven't integrated OpenLog with XPages yet myself, but when I do, there's going to be a show on it. I promise you that. OpenLog is that important. So these are the three tools right now that I know of, at least, that you really should have your eyes on for XPages development. Okay, with all that stuff being said, let's go to Mark, and he's going to introduce his XPages Debug Toolbar and show us how to work with it.
Hi, my name is Mark Leusink, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about the XPages Debug Toolbar. That's a tool I created you can use when you're doing XPages development. It's probably not the coolest, but definitely one of the most useful XPages custom controls that's around. First of all, a little bit about myself. This is what I look like. I live in the Netherlands in a small town called Badmen, and I'm currently working as a freelance consultant slash developer. I have done a lot of development for the IBM Lotus Domino platform in the past for over 13 years, and I'm currently working on a number of projects for various customers in the area of XPages and mobile development. I'm also one of the IBM champions, and I'm active on OpenNTF. Besides the debug toolbar, you can also find a couple of other projects of mine on that website. The features of the XPages Debug Toolbar. As I said, it's a tool for XPages developers, and first of all, it can show you the contents of the scopes you have available in XPages. So that's the application, the session, view, and the request scope, and it allows you to view all the values that are stored in those scopes, and it allows you to change and remove those values as well. It also gives you a list of useful environment variables, and probably the most useful feature of the toolbar is the messages area. In the screenshot on the right of this slide, you can see the messages area, and that allows you to print all kinds of information which you would normally print to probably the server console to the toolbar. And the biggest advantage of that is that you have that information available to you right where you want it. That's on the same page as you are currently developing. The messages in the messages section are stored in the session scope. So if you navigate away from the current page and you're navigating to other pages, the messages remain in the list until you clear them or until you open another session. The timers tab of the toolbar has some basic profiling functions, so you can set various timers on the next page and get information on how long a certain function or a certain process took. The API Inspector tab contains an embedded API inspector. It was originally written by Tommy Verland. It was and is also available on OpenNTF, and I decided to integrate that into the toolbar because it's very handy to have around to show you the methods and properties that are available on all the controls on the next page. And you can also use the API inspector to show the methods and properties of managed beans. And the toolbar, of course, is completely free and available through OpenNTF. I'll have a link to the project site or to my blog, on which you can find the link to the project site on OpenNTF and the final sheet of this presentation and demo. Okay, let's go to the designer client. If you want to use the debug toolbar, you can do that you can get the toolbar in two different ways. First way is to go to the project site on OpenNTF and download the latest release. In that release you'll find a database that contains the toolbar and a couple of demo pages. And the other way to get the toolbar is by using the OpenNTF import tool. That was already covered in another episode of NotesIn9. I think it was episode 66. So I won't go into the details on how to install that widget. I'll just use it in this video. If you install the widget, you'll have this little icon on the top menu bar. And you can also right-click on any database, go to the OpenNTF submenu, and click Import Reusable Control from OpenNTF. As you can see, I've set up a very basic demo XPage, and if from this application I go to the OpenNTF submenu, click Import Reusable Control, then open the Apache catalog category, and then you'll find it somewhere in this list. Here it is. Click Finish. It'll give you a message that it's going to import all the necessary information. And if we wait for a couple of seconds, it'll import the toolbar into the current application. Since I already imported it previously, it'll ask me to overwrite a couple of resources. Okay, and it's done. You'll notice that you'll now have a custom control in your in your project that contains the debug toolbar. And if I add that custom control to my XPage, save the XPage and preview it, I get an error message. And this is pretty normal because the OpenNTF import tool doesn't support adding managed beans to an application, and the XPages Debug Toolbar uses a managed bean for to function. So what you need to do, it's also written on this screen. You need to copy this managed bean definition and add that to the phases config file in your application. The phases config file can be found by opening the Package Explorer. If you don't have that available here, you can also open it through Window, Show, Eclipse View, Package Explorer. Then open the application you're working on. Open the web content folder, then the webint folder, and there you should have the phases config file. So if I double click on that and add the managed bean definition I just copied from the web page to this file, save this. Let's refresh the web page. And here it is. This is the XPages Debug Toolbar. You can view all the various tabs, and as I said before, it allows you to view the contents of the various scopes. So for instance, the session scope contains these variables. The other way to get the XPages Debug Toolbar is by opening by viewing the sample database you can find in the release from OpenNTF, and I've already installed that on my server. So let's open that up. If you put that application on your server and open the default page, you get redirected to a sample page that allows you to use basic functions of the toolbar, and it also gives you some information on various methods that are available on the toolbar and how to use them. So let's go through all the sections of the toolbar, the different tabs. Application scope tab contains the contents of the application scope, and the demo page has a button on it that says add sample data to scope variables. If I click that, it will add some variables to the various scopes just for you to see what happens. So this variable was just added to the application scope. If I click on session scope, these are the contents of the session scope, contents of the view scope, and of the request scope. You'll notice also some other links on the top of the screen. There's a hide list option, and what that does, it hides the lists, so vector arrays or hash maps that are stored in the various scopes, just to give you a better overview of the contents of the scopes. So if I can now go back to the session scope, you'll notice that the hash map variable is now hidden, and I can show it again by clicking the show lists link. There's also an option here to clear the session scope or clear the application scope as well as the session scope, and every scope tab has a refresh link on it. So for instance, if you did a partial refresh on a certain area of your page, you can click the refresh link to refresh the contents of the current scope. Let's go to the next section, which I call the Java and custom variables section. This gives you, first of all, this gives you information about the current Java memory usage. So you can see that on my local development server, I have a maximum heap size of 80 megabytes. I've used 80 megabytes and the total allocated space is 36 megabytes. From this section I can also run the garbage collector, which will free up a little bit more of the used memory. Below that is a section that shows you all kind of environment information. So for example, the current logged in user, the access level of the current logged in user, the roles, if there are any, the groups to which the user belongs, user agent, etc. It also gives you at the bottom here a list of the cookies that are set by this server. Next up is the, well, let's go to the messages tab. You can see that it already contains 3 messages and there's a link on top to clear all the messages, so let's do that. And the demo page has a couple of buttons on it that add different types of messages to the messages section. So if I click this button to add an info message, or this button to add a warning message, error message, sorry, or a warning message, you'll notice that the various types of messages look different in the messages screen, so you can easily see the difference between them. The messages section also has a add divider link, which adds a divider to the messages section. So after you've added the divider and click the info button again to add an info message to the messages section, you'll see that the list of messages was divided. What I didn't tell you is that you can open and close all the various sections of the debug toolbar by clicking on them. So if you click on messages, I've now opened the messages tab, and if I click again on the messages tab, it's closed. There's also a close button at the bottom of the toolbar, and there's this link over here that allows you to collapse the toolbar, so it won't be in the way of your of the page you're working on. You can expand it again, and if you look at the right of the right part of the toolbar, there are 2 links here. First one is the about link, which shows you some information about me and some contact details, and there's a remove link, and what this remove link does, it removes the toolbar for the current session. So it's completely gone if I click this. I won't do it now, but you can trust me on that. It removes the toolbar completely for the current session, so if I close the browser window, reopened it, the toolbar would just be added again. So going back to the messages tab, there's also a link in this section called Open in External Window, and this opens a second window containing only the messages section of the toolbar. And I'll make this part a little smaller. And this external window can be configured or can be set to automatically refresh within a certain interval. So if I now add messages to the toolbar using these buttons, after a couple of seconds they will appear in the external window. Let's close that again. Let's have a look at how you can actually add those messages to the debug toolbar. If we go back to the original X page I showed you at the beginning of this video, this one, refresh that. You'll notice that it now has the debug toolbar on top. And if we go to the design of that X page, and for instance click on this button control, and click on the script editor, and I can now use a call or enter a command to add a message to the debug toolbar. In the beginning of this video, I also showed you that you had to add a managed bean to the configuration of your application. That managed bean is called dbar, and since it's managed bean, you'll now have the dbar object available to you everywhere in the application. So in the script editor for this button control, I can now add a command that will add a message to the toolbar. So going back to the browser interface again, refreshing this, and if I now click on the button, you'll see that there was a message added to the toolbar. There are you can add 4 different types of messages to the toolbar. The info message is the first one. Debug message is the second one. Then we have the warning type message and an error type message. So if we add these 4 types of messages, go back to the browser window, click refresh, and click on the button again, you'll now see that there are 4 messages added to the toolbar. And if I click the clear messages button, well, you can imagine what that does. Okay. What's also pretty useful of the messages part of the toolbar is that it doesn't only allow strings of messages to be written to the toolbar, but it can also write error messages to the toolbar. So if you add a try catch section to your script, let's get rid of these, and in the catch section I'll just write dbar.error e, and what this will do is when an error is catched, it will write the error message back to the toolbar. So let's see if we can do something here that will throw an error. So this is obviously not a valid UNID. So I'll just save this. Let's see what happens. Okay, and you'll see that it contains 1 message now, and this is the error message that was thrown by the try catch section. Okay, one of the features I also want to show you is the dbar.dump message or function. This allows you to dump the contents of a complete object to the toolbar. So let's get rid of this line and just do a dbar, just dump the contents of the complete session scope. If I click on this button, so going back to the web interface, just click clear and click on the button, and you'll see that it has dumped the complete contents of the session scope to the toolbar. You can also use this if you are working with your own objects. So for example, if you did this Okay, this is a custom JSON object I now created, and I can use the dump method of the toolbar to dump that entire object to the messages section. Here it is. The debug toolbar uses a managed bean, and the biggest advantage of that is that that managed bean is now everywhere available in this current application. I showed you that you can use it in a script that's behind a button control, but you can also use the various dbar functions or methods from any other area. So if we, for example, go to the XPages events and write something in the before page load event, click save, back to the web interface and refresh this page, and you'll see that it added this message while it was processing the before page load event. The debug toolbar messages section can also be used to write messages from any Java code. So I just showed you an example to write messages to the debug toolbar from server-side JavaScript, so from the execute script section of a button or from one of the XPages events. But you can also call the XPages toolbar methods from a Java class. And if you download the latest release from OpenNTF, in the demo database is also a managed bean and a Java class called example, and that shows you how you can use and call the debug toolbar from Java. So, for example, in the constructor of the example bean, the debug toolbar is the current current instance of the debug toolbar is retrieved using the get function, and after that is done, it calls the debug function, which writes a debug message to the messages section. Same goes for later the info and warning call, and it just as in server-side JavaScript, it can also catch throwable errors and then write the full stack trace to the messages section. So let me show you an example of that. If I go back to the demo application in the browser, let's clear all the messages. If I click this function or this button, it will call a function in the bean I just showed you, and you notice that it now that it wrote all the messages from the bean to the debug toolbar. For example, this is the message that was written in the constructor of the bean, and if I now call the same function again, you'll notice that that message is gone. That's because the example bean has a session scope, so it stays in memory, and it doesn't get constructed after every call. There's also a button here you can use to throw an error in the Java code, and you'll see that I've used the dbar.error call to throw the throwable error to the toolbar, and it shows you the error message from the error, and it allows you to view the entire stack trace of the message. Okay, next up is the timers section. This allows you to profile certain functions. So at the beginning of a certain function, you can write start timer, and at the end of that of the function, you can write stop timer, and it'll just show you the difference between the start and end time. So there are sample buttons for that timer section too on the demo page. So I can click here to start a sample timer and click the next button to stop it, and it ran for almost 5 seconds. The toolbar can be configured. It has some parameters in the custom control. So if I open the demo page from the demo database and have a look at the properties of the toolbar custom control, you'll notice that you can change if it collapses to the left or right of your screen. Let's change that to right. Make it default collapsed. This will only this is only done upon initialization of the toolbar. So when you're first loading it on a web page, and you can set the toolbar color if you don't like the dark gray color that it has by default. I think I need to clean this database. So the dbar managed bean will be initialized again. If I now go to the web interface, open this page, you can see that it's now collapsed by default. It's red and it collapsed to the right section, or right hand side of your screen. One thing it's also important is that there are no dependencies for the debug toolbar on any other library, so you don't need the extension library to be able to use the toolbar. A basic installation of a Domino server is sufficient. The last part I'm going to show you is the API inspector section, and what this allows you to do is to view the methods and properties of any component you have on your page. So if you click the component IDs combo box, you'll see all the IDs of all the components that are somewhere on your screen. So let's take one of the buttons, and after I've clicked that button, you can see all the methods and fields that button has. It's pretty handy to have around. What you can also do using the API inspector is view the methods and fields of any bean you have defined. So for example, if we take dbar bean, and you'll need to use a combination of shift and enter to execute this this command. So I just entered the name of the dbar managed bean, and you'll see that this is the class name of the dbar bean, and here you'll see all the methods are available on the dbar bean, and you can do this for every managed bean you have in your application. So that's about it. There's one sheet left, I think. Here it is. If you have any questions, remarks, bugs, or future requests, go to the OpenNTF project site. There's a link to the project site at my blog, which I maintain at the address you see here. That's link.eu. It has also a couple of links to the other projects I worked on OpenNTF. If you want to contact me, here's my email address, and if you want to follow me, that's my my Twitter handle. I'll also be at the IBM Connect in January, so if you see me there, and just as a reminder, this is what I look like. So if you see me there, come on over and say hi to me, and let me know what you think of the toolbar. And if you really like the toolbar, then well, here's a hint. Thanks for watching.
And that's the demo. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you find the toolbar as helpful as I have in the last couple years. And if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.